Okay, so we're diving into a story that's pretty intense. You know those 20 medical and dental students kidnapped in Nigeria, the ones you wanted to know more about? Well, we're going to try to do that today using this news piece from the Way Out Media Network.
Sounds heavy.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but just the thought of being on a bus, especially with friends, headed to something you're really excited about, only to have it turn into a kidnapping, it's chilling. And that's exactly what these students are
Yeah.
going through.
It's a harsh reality, and what's even more unsettling is that these weren't just any students, right? The article points out that they were all Catholic and studying medicine and dentistry on their way to this big annual convention of their professional group in Enugu.
Yeah, that detail really struck me too. It adds another layer to it. Like
Yeah.
they weren't just randomly targeted.
Exactly. And to make it even more unsettling, this happened on a stretch of road already known for kidnappings. Otukub Road in Benue State, they call it out. The article even mentions similar incidents on that very same road just weeks before.
So not only are these students specifically targeted, it's like the kidnappers knew exactly where to strike. Almost like it was planned, which is terrifying. And the article mentions a lack of police presence on that road as a factor, making it attractive to criminals.
Yeah, it's a sad reality, but you're right. A lack of security can turn any area into a breeding ground for this kind of lawlessness. It makes you wonder, what does it say about the bigger picture when it comes to resource allocation for security, especially on routes that are known to be high risk?
Big questions, for sure. But amidst all this darkness, there's this one detail that really got to me. They were going to represent their university's Jos in Maiduguri at the Federation of Catholic Medical and Dental Students annual gathering. Can you imagine how excited they must have been? This wasn't just a random trip for them.
It adds another layer of sadness, doesn't it? All that anticipation and excitement just ripped away. And it speaks to the significance of this federation, this FECAM you mentioned. It's not just any student group.
Yeah, I was hoping you could shed some light on that. What is FECAMDS exactly, and why is their annual convention such a big deal?
Absolutely. So the article describes FECAMDS as an organization specifically for Catholic medical and dental students all across Nigeria. It actually operates under this larger umbrella of the Nigerian Federation of Catholic Students, which includes students from all different areas of study. But for these students, this annual convention, it's like their big event. It's a chance to connect with students from other universities, engage in religious activities, and just celebrate their faith and their future careers together. It's like a mix of a professional conference and a religious retreat all rolled into one. A chance to learn to network, to share their faith. Having it end this way, it just makes the whole thing even more heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really does. It paints such a vivid picture of who these students are.
Mhm.
People driven by their faith and a desire to help others makes the whole situation feel even more senseless.
It is a senseless tragedy, and sadly, it shines a light on a much bigger problem in Nigeria: kidnapping.
That's the thing, isn't it? As awful as this story is, it's just one piece of a much larger and more disturbing trend. So can you give us some context here? Just how common are kidnappings in Nigeria?
It's become horrifyingly common, especially in certain regions. Hard numbers are difficult to pin down because a lot of it goes unreported, but different sources suggest hundreds, if not thousands, of kidnappings happen every year.
Wow, hundreds, maybe even thousands. That's just
Oh.
staggering. Are there any patterns to these kidnappings?
Unfortunately, yes. While anyone could be a target, there are some recurring things we see, like this incident shows kidnappings along major roads are common. These roads often go through remote areas without a lot of security, which makes them prime spots for ambushes.
Right, like the article said, not a lot of police presence on those roads makes them easy targets.
Mhm.
It's scary how this creates a cycle. More kidnappings happen. People are more afraid to travel those areas, become even more appealing to criminals.
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle, and it really highlights the larger problems of security and law enforcement in those regions. Another trend we see is the targeting of specific groups. Not always, of course. But students, especially those seen as wealthy or coming from well-off families, are often targeted.
That's a horrible equation. Vulnerability plus the perception of profit.
In a way, yes. But it's important to remember that every kidnapping is a complex event with its own unique circumstances. Still, by recognizing these patterns, we can start to understand what's causing this crisis and hopefully find ways to stop it.
That makes sense. So let's talk about the why. What are some of the root causes driving this kidnapping crisis in Nigeria? Is it purely about money, or is there more to it?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's complicated. While economic desperation definitely plays a role, things like unemployment, poverty, and inequality create an environment where crime can flourish, it's not the whole story. We also have to look at things like corruption, political instability, and the easy access to weapons. All of these contribute to a sense of lawlessness and a belief that criminals can act without consequence.
So it's not just one thing, but this whole web of social, economic, and political factors that have created this perfect storm.
Unfortunately, yes. And while it can feel overwhelming, understanding these complexities is crucial if we want to find effective solutions.
It's a lot to process. But you're right, we have to understand the problem before we can even begin to think about solutions. It really is a lot to take in. But knowing this now kind of begs the question, what happens next? The article did mention that the Benue State Police are investigating. So, given everything we've just talked about, what are the chances of these students actually being found and brought home safely?
That's the question on everyone's mind right now, and unfortunately, there's no easy answer. These situations are so fluid, so unpredictable. Sometimes families are able to negotiate ransoms, and their loved ones are released. In other cases, law enforcement steps in, makes arrests, and secures the safe return of those who were taken.
So there is hope for a positive outcome here.
There's always hope, and it's important to cling to that. But we also have to be realistic about the challenges. The success of investigations and rescue operations often hinges on things like the resources available to law enforcement, the level of cooperation they receive from witnesses and the community, and even the political will to truly tackle the problem.
It's a lot to unpack. I can't even imagine what these students' families must be going through. The waiting, the not knowing. It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely. This incident is a stark reminder of the human cost of these crimes, the fear that grips communities, and the desperate need for real, lasting solutions.
Well said. And on that note, as we wrap up our deep dive on this tragedy, that final thought from the article really stuck with me. The fact that this happened on a road notorious for being dangerous,
Yeah.
it makes you think, how often do we unknowingly put ourselves at risk? And what responsibility do authorities have in making sure public roads are actually safe?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves. This incident, while extreme, highlights just how important it is to be aware, to be vigilant, and to speak up for our own safety and the safety of our communities. We can't always predict or prevent these things from happening, but we can work towards a world where they are less likely to occur.
That's a powerful thought to end on. It's been a heavy conversation, but incredibly important. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. If anything, we hope this encourages you to think critically about your own surroundings and how you can advocate for change, and maybe even inspire you to look into ways to support organizations fighting to end kidnapping and violence in Nigeria and around the world.